This is the NTT IndyCar Series. With live coverage of today's final warm-up, this is IndyCar Radio.
I'm here with pole sitter Pato O'Ward. Pato, this has got to feel good. It's been a long time coming. Your 6th NTT IndyCar Series pole position.
Feels good, man. Feels good. After St. Pete, we were determined to have a good qualifying here, and just seeing where we were here last year, the team has done a great job with bringing a car that's more consistent, faster, and we've definitely brought some performance. So super stoked to see it. We've locked out front row, so great job to Christian as well. He's been quick, so it'll be a pretty hectic race with the tire deg, and I think we're going to be thinking our strategy if we have a good race.
Just but setup is so crucial here. It looks like the McLaren package has it dialed in.
Yeah, I mean we weren't so happy with the overnight changes, so we kind of fell back to where we started the weekend, and cars in the window for sure. Maybe not for Q1 so much, but we dialed it in and we got it done.
That was our Jonathan Grace with your pole sitter, Pato O'Ward, after qualifying yesterday. Welcome to the Thermo Club IndyCar Grand Prix, scheduled for a little bit later on this afternoon. Final 30-minute warm-up session to get prepared for racing. And, Davey, a lot of questions going into the weekend, and I wonder if this 30-minute session will finally result in some answers for teams that are still looking for answers to those questions.
Well, I think it's going to be a key time. It always is. These final warm-ups, I mean, it's purely race setup. I mean, they're going to be full loads of fuel in all these cars. They're going to be using what little bit of alternate tires they have after qualifying, just to see how many more laps they can get out of them, see what that pace is going to be. But also, they're going to be putting on those primaries just to see how long they could go on that on the primaries as well, and see how much speed falls off. Mark, it's going to be like 40 seconds at a pit stop, to come in and make a pit stop. We know the tires are going to fall off. We know the alternates are really going to fall off. So it's going to be a key session for all these teams to find that out.
Yeah, a lot of questions for sure. The thing is about the grip level, Davey, a lot of folks have made some comparisons to other racetracks. Joseph Newgarden, for one, said the grip level here reminded him a lot of Laguna Seca before the repave. So what are you hearing of late, especially after practice and qualifying yesterday, about how grippy this track is or isn't?
Yeah, so one thing, as we talked about being the cheese grater, it is a hard on tires, but it was a lack of grip. I mean, I think all day for everybody, they're just trying to get a balance of their cars, trying to find, just where they could be. Where if you get off line just a little bit here, Mark, it really makes the front end slide more than the rear, and it's just hard to get the cars to turn. So I think they're going to find that today. It's going to be really hot. It's going to be hotter today than it was yesterday. Sun's going to be beat down on the track. It's going to be in the mid-90s, I think, for temperature. I expect track temperature to be up in that 125-degree range. And by the way, it's now you got to race with each other, and it's going to be a lot of action out there. We've seen cars just barely slip off track, and a plume of dust. I mean, it's dusty. Matter of fact, they had to throw a local yellow at one point with so much dust in one of the corners. So that's going to be what we see all day today.
Happy to have David Land with us for this session. And David, some big stories with Earl McLaren locking down the front row for the first time in IndyCar team history. A good run for Alexander Rossi, who rolls off 6th. But the big story, the trio of Team Penske drivers do not advance out of the first round.
Yeah, I think that surprised just about everybody up and down the paddock, that no Team Penske car got out of the first round of qualifying. I suspect we will see them later on in the race today, though. I mean, you think about all the smart people that are on the pit boxes of those 3 teams, and you think about some of the strategy calls they've made in the past. I seem to remember an Iowa race a couple of years ago where Simon Pagenaud started last and ended up winning the race. And in a race where it's not necessarily going to be the driver that wins this race, it's going to be the folks on the pit box and in the pit box, and there's really no better team than Team Penske at those 2 aspects of the sport. So I think we'll see them before the end of the day.
Race strategists have always been important, David, but are even more so through the first couple of races of the season, it would seem.
Yeah, it seems like, we still don't have a grip on the tires, pardon the pun, right now. We don't know what the right strategy is yet. I think Davey Hamilton has suggested a couple of times throughout this weekend that you're going to want to start on the soft compound tires, but we saw a few people not do that at St. Pete, and that seemed to be the right strategy call. So that's going to be the key today. What is the right strategy? How do you execute that strategy? And I'm telling you, one of the things that I'm looking at is that pit exit too. I think we've seen a lot of give and take throughout the practice and qualifying sessions, but when we get to hot pit stops, we've never seen hot pit stops stops at this race before. So what is that pit exit going to look like? I think we're going to see at least a couple of cars before the end of the day come to blows.
Oh, I don't know what you're talking about. They always play nice. They have the utmost respect for one another in competitive situations. It is a beautiful day. Beautiful start to what we think will be a beautiful day. Let's get the specifics on that by welcoming in Jay Query.
Thank you, Mark, and beautiful is indeed the case, although obviously it will only get warmer. 66 degrees right now is the ambient temperature. Track temperature is 69 degrees. That will obviously heat up, and then that tire grip that you talked about, Mark, is going to be one of the things that we will watch. As a matter of fact, I talked to Kyle Moyer just a couple of minutes ago, and he was talking about the fact that Scott McLaughlin, for example, one of those Penske cars that just missed it throughout qualifying, and Kyle Moyer told me, look, I think that we have a pretty good race pace, but unfortunately he had gotten kind of run off, did McLaughlin, held up a little bit in his flyer lap early yesterday in the first practice session, and then he said the tires just did not have the grip that we wanted. Now McLaughlin does have red tires that have been saved for this race and feels like he might be able to double stint on the softer compound red tires. Colton Herta may try a similar strategy, but again, the fall off on those tires is very vast, they are assuming. So that will be one of the things that we watch to see how much they stay on those reds over the course of this race today. But this track will get hotter. When it does, it will get slicker. But right now, 69 degrees is the track temperature.
17 turns, 65 laps, a little over 3 miles in length, and that main straightaway, there's some speed there, but it's kind of a hairpin turn back through that left-hander, and then they hit another short straightaway, and as they set up for 2, and then on to turn number 3, and that's when today they will pop into the view of Michael Young. And Michael, you're covering a very fast portion of the racetrack.
Indeed I am, and there is a crossover, turns 4 and 5, that Alex Palou is entering right now. And talk about a man on a mission. Alex Palou, at the start of this warm-up session, allowed Marcus Ericsson to get around him. He then exited turn number 6, trying to catch Ericsson. He popped into his view, trying to get around him in turn number 7. He's just let Dixon by. He's just let the 18 Arenas VK by, practicing passes out here in this portion of the course. It is extremely fast. That switchback, that chicane of 4 and 5, they get down to turn 6, it's a hairpin, they're down to first gear, and then they're launching. So you brake late, try to launch as early as you can. It's a long run down into turn number 7. As a matter of fact, Bart, I saw so much tire smoke from somebody locking them up at turn number 7, it didn't dissipate for at least 15 to 20 seconds. So extremely fast portion of the track, and potentially an opportunity to set yourself up for a pass.
Starts and restarts could be very interesting by the time they work their way around to turn number 7. From there on through 9 and 10, Nick Yeoman will be keeping an eye on the proceedings.
Yeah, no doubt. Turn 7 is a left-hander, 90-degree left-hand turn. As we see, Colton Herta went off the racetrack and took a nice abbreviated exit of one of the corners. But you mentioned turn 7, 8, and 9. Double apex, swooping corners. These drivers really waiting to pick up the throttle with these left and right hand turns, especially turn number 9. It's the longest corner on the track. There's a pretty significant bump too right before you enter turn number 9 that the drivers have had to navigate all weekend long. A lot of places where you can really upset that car. We watch Marcus Ericsson has navigated through that part of the racetrack. Here comes Jacob Abel. He's headed towards turn number 9 as well. So Mark, it is the back half portion of this racetrack. Once they clear turn number 9, you're headed to a pair of double S's where we have seen drivers really try to blitz their way through this racetrack all weekend.
Davey, good weekend again for Andretti Global, we should say. You know, yeah. Colton Herta had his issues in the pits at St. Petersburg that threw away his day, but a good start all in all for them to the season, because they qualified all 3 cars in the top 8 yesterday.
Yeah, that's right. Great run by the Andretti team for, as you said, both events so far. So they just need to, control the mistakes. And I think that's in pit lane is one of the key ones. Obviously, drivers can make mistakes as well. But it seems like for Colton's case, it all happened on pit lane where it took him out of contention to win that first race at St. Petersburg.
You and Ed Carpenter have been friends for a long, long time, and probably about the happiest you've seen that paddock in quite some time after the job that Alexander Rossi did yesterday. He'll start in row number 3.
Yeah, you know, it's pretty amazing just the difference that you feel when you see the different ECR. I mean, the branding's different, the logo's different, and the field's different, Mark, down there. I mean, they've changed a lot of things, just the appearance of the team. It does seem like it's taken it a notch up. I mean, I think that with the partner coming in there and new sponsorship and with Rossi joining the team, it just feels different in that team. And Ed seemed very happy, and the speed is obviously with Rossi is making him happy as well.
You know, Davey, Michael brought up something interesting in terms of these drivers figuring out how to race one another. This is a vastly different animal than that event a year ago in terms of just the length of the race. And we're seeing groups of cars at 3 and 4 and 5 running together, and guys are driving with their mirrors a little bit. This session, too, seems to be a find-out session as to how these cars are going to handle the traffic today.
Yeah, and we see a group of them right now actually going through turn 7, turn 8. We see several cars getting piled up down there, and that's what it's about. They're going to have to find out what their car is like in dirty air, where the passing zones are going to be, which even though we have straightaways and we go into hairpins, which is really an opportunity to pass, that's where they're all going to be. But I have to say, coming off 6, going into 7, I think is going to be the most interesting one. Even though 7's a really fast entry, we're going to see passing everywhere, but I think in these straightaways into the hairpins, we're going to see most action. Now, another thing, when these tires start degrading and start slowing down, and say you have the alternates on and they start losing a lot of speed, those with the primaries are going to be able to pass you fairly easy. And so we're going to see overtaking all over this 3-mile course today.
David Land, we talked to the folks from Firestone going into the weekend. We asked them about one of the many variables to this race, and the fact that because of where we are, there's a lot of dirt, a lot of dust. We've seen a lot of it thrown up in this session already, and we asked them what they could do about it, if anything. And you know, they threw out a very politically correct answer about compounds and looking at data and things of that nature, but truth be told, there's just not a whole lot you can do but just stay out of that stuff.
Yeah, 1,000%, but it's easier said than done, right, Mark? You just mentioned it. It's all over the racetrack. I mean, we're racing in a desert. It's going to be hard to avoid some of that dirt and dust. The good news, I guess, is everybody's on the same tire. Everybody's got the same tools. You just have to figure out the best way to use the tools that you're given, and that's what we're going to see today. And whoever excels at that is going to end up in the winner's circle.
Nick Yeoman, resiliency is the part of the necessary makeup of an NTT IndyCar Series driver. And Louis Foster's debut, not at all what he wanted, caught up in that early opening lap crash, we should say, at St. Petersburg, but showing no signs of, questioning his ability. Obviously, good, solid qualifying run for him yesterday. He was in the top 10, and I just go back to about a year ago at Barber and all the frustration and aggravation he faced with all the mechanical issues. I don't think he made a clean exit out of the pits at any point in any session all weekend long, and yet was dominant in winning a championship. I think we got a glimpse this weekend so far of what we can expect from Louis Foster.
Yeah, and I think he said all the right things after being caught up in that opening lap accident with Nolan Siegel and Will Power at St. Petersburg, and knew that, hey, that's how it goes. You know, the Indy Next, he was starting up front for a lot of those races and dominating, cruising to that championship a year ago. So I think, coming into the preseason, I talked with Louis, and he understood the type of challenges that were ahead of him, especially entering as a rookie. And for a Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan team who, let's not pull any punches, has been a little down over the last couple years. But for him to put that car into the second round of qualifying, starting 10th today as a rookie, I think it's really impressive, Mark. And he's going to be a driver that I think we've got to keep our eye on.
Michael Young, throughout most of the weekend, you've been out in your position. You've been able to see a car go by and then go 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4. Not so much. I think you're going to be pretty busy out there today.
Oh, it's exciting already, and we haven't even gotten started. Will Power and Christian Lundgaard. I just wanted to point out, and David talked about the slickness of this track yesterday. It is very windy out here, very dusty. Christian Lundgaard got a great run on Will Power exiting turn number 6 to the point where Lundgaard got a run, went to the inside of Power on driver's left, and kicked up so much dust that it looked like he was actually locking up the brakes and tire smoke. There was that much dust on that inside line. So as drivers begin to pass, setting up for turn number 7, this exit out of 6 into that corner will be interesting to see how dirty this track gets just with the wind and the sand and debris that gets up onto this course. It's going to be tricky for these drivers all afternoon long.
Tino Ferrucci is leading a trio of cars your way. Michael Young looks like one of the Arrow McLaren cars is headed that way, and that may be Will Power, the third car in that line.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun to watch. Christian Lundgaard is that meat in the sandwich between Santino Ferrucci and Will Power. We'll see if Lundgaard can get a nice run out of turn number 6. He'll tuck up underneath that rear wing of Santino Ferrucci. Gets another nice run. Everybody on the primaries, with the exception of Will Power, he is on the alternates. Lundgaard looking to the inside again, trying to make a pass at turn number 7.
Yeah, Christian Lundgaard's going to be a factor today. There's no doubt, starting on the outside of the front row as he gets around Santino Ferrucci down there at the entrance of turn number 7. Now Will Power will try to set up the American from Connecticut through turn number 8. But Mark, I think Christian Lundgaard, all the attention on Pato O'Ward winning the pole. Obviously Alex Palou has been quick all weekend long. Christian Lundgaard doing exactly what Arrow McLaren wants him to do and be that second driver that can push Pato. What a weekend for them so far this weekend, and I think that 7 car is going to be a sharp one to watch.
I just got a good look at the DHL machine, Davey, coming through 16 and 17. That's Alex Palou, and he got it up and over that curbing, and I'll tell you what, that's still plenty run through there. They did some work on it during the offseason, but it is far from smooth.
Yeah, you know what they did is they took the curbing out completely, but it's still a hump in the road there, and it's still enough of a hump that when the cars go over that, they do get airborne. I mean, it's on painted surface as well, so their grip isn't there. They get a little bit airborne, and we seen yesterday with McLaughlin, if you come off that and you have input in that steering wheel for turn 17, you can turn the car around, which he did a 360 and continued on. So it's a tricky little area there, and you got to be careful not to try to, bell housings take kind of a beating when they bottom out like that. So you need to be careful on that as well. Now, they were doing that yesterday in practice and during qualifying. That was not full fuel load. So now the car's going to be a little bit heavier, could be a little bit lower to the ground with the fuel load. So they really got to be cautious over that area.
So now let's get you to put your race strategist hat on. David referenced it earlier. David Land did, in terms of how you would stack the tires in terms of the primaries and the alternates. So what is that going to look like? And again, the concern is, and we've heard a few people express that in various reports over the course of the weekend, that there's little chance that tire wear is going to match up to the fuel stint. And so the last handful of laps on a set of tires could be plenty interesting for these teams and drivers.
Yeah, with no question about it. And I still feel the same. I'm going to go to the strategy that worked in St. Petersburg, and that is start with the alternate tires, and you hope for an early yellow to get them off the car. It worked for them. Obviously, McLaughlin set on the pole. He did not go with that strategy. They came back to a 4th place finish, so a good finish still, even though that he was on the primaries, and they stayed out during that first yellow while a lot of the teams came in, got those alternates off, got them out of the way. But right now, you hate to say it, but I mean, if a yellow comes out, and if you look at the percentages of when that yellow comes out, it is on the first few laps of these races. And so I would take that gamble. If I don't want alternates for a long stint and I want to get them off early, I'm going to gamble that yellow is going to come out towards the first of this race. So I'm going to start with the alternates and then go to the primaries for the rest of the race.
I will say, though, that over the course of this weekend, all the majority of these teams and drivers, they do, however, Davey, express much more confidence in the alternates than they did at St. Petersburg.
Yeah, they're going to last longer, no question about it. The green sidewall tire, which is on the street courses at St. Petersburg, considerably softer. They were only good for 1, maybe 2 laps. Third lap, it was already way off the pace. The red sidewall, softer compound tires, they have a longer window. I mean, matter of fact, sometimes the best lap on them may be your 4th lap on this 3-mile course. So they last significantly longer. It just depends on how fast they fall off. As we continue to say, long pit road here. It takes a long time to make a pit stop here in that 40-second range. So if you can go 30 laps on a tank of fuel and you're losing a second a lap, well, you're better off to do that than make a 40-second pit stop to put new tires on. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all lays out. I mean, pit road's going to be really key today, and then we'll see, what kind of action that we have on pit road to get out of that tricky exit.
Michael Young.
Yeah, I was talking a little bit earlier about Christian Lundgaard and Will Power. Misidentified Lundgaard. He was actually on the alternate tires, so too Will Power. And Santino Ferrucci is actually on the primaries, and they have been pulling away from Ferrucci for the last 4 or 5 laps, but it looks right about now that Ferrucci is somewhat stabilized, and we'll just keep an eye on Ferrucci as long as that pack of cars remain on track to see if he starts to pick up the pace, and we'll see how far off these alternate tires tires fall as this practice session progresses. But it just was interesting that Ferrucci unable to keep up with those two cars, and they kept pulling away, but Ferrucci, again, starting to at least keep pace with the alternate tires.
18 of the 27 cars, Davey, are running alternates in this session as we speak.
That's exactly, and they need to do that. They need to run those tires until they can't run any longer, until the pace is so far off that they're losing a massive amount of speed. But they need to find out what lap that is. How far can they go? Is it going to be 5 laps? Is it going to be 15 laps? We're going to find out as we, as this session ends, and we're going to talk to a lot of people before this race starts just to see where the alternates stack up against the primaries and where these guys are going to start. You're going to see a mixed field. Nobody's just going to choose alternates to start. It's going to be a mixed field. It always is. That's what keeps it exciting. As we talked about Penske, they have to mix it up. I mean, they're towards the back of the field. Might as well do off strategy just to try to gamble it, to try to get in front of this pack. And that could be one thing with you put primaries on, for the back guys. And if a yellow does come out early and some of the guys want to get off the alternate, they do that, but it cycles that Penske or whoever's on the primaries to the front of the field.
Well, if you like track activity, you have to like this session, Davey, because normally you get 2, 3, 4 laps, and they come in, maybe take a look at shocks and springs, make some adjustments here and there. But I mean, we're looking up and down, and I mean, Connor Daly's turn 1 lap might be an issue, a reason why. Same thing with Joseph Newgarden. But all in all, everybody's now coming very, very close to turning 10 laps in this session. About 26 cars going to turn maybe over 10 laps here with 6 minutes to go in the session.
Yeah, they're 8, 9, 10 laps right now, as you just said, Mark. They're starting to stack them up and getting some long runs in, getting a full fuel load run in, seeing what the fuel mileage is going to be, just seeing what those pit windows are going to be, how long they could go before they actually have to pit with fuel. But, I'll promise you this, the driver, he is going to want tires before he's out of fuel. I promise you that. And that's what we do. We always want the best, tire we can get. We want the car to handle the best we can. But sometimes the driver has to go out there and just struggle around on bad tires to get the fuel mileage they need to make the strategy work.
Nick Yeoman, there's little doubt that in your portion of the racetrack that we have seen a lot of drivers running in traffic trying to see just how well these cars are going to handle after they exit the longest straightaway on this racetrack.
Yeah, because that's, that entrance down into turn number 7 is your best opportunity to make some passes because you can really set them up. Michael talked about some of the runs that he's seen drivers getting out of turn 6 and getting in the draft and setting guys up for turn number 7. Once you leave turn number 7, that's where you really start to feel the G-forces because these aren't stop and steer, hard brake corners. You're carrying a lot of speed to the left, to the right, and then back to the left. And ultimately, when you start throwing in some dirty air, it's going to be 15, 20 degrees hotter later today when we go racing. Then all of a sudden, grip becomes at a premium. So watching drivers through 8 and 9, Mark, try to stay on line and tucked up right behind, drivers as close as they can run and see if they can navigate and set drivers up. It's going to be a challenge later today, but the drivers who have the best setups are certainly going to find some opportunities to make passes and set guys up out of turn number 9, headed to those S's.
Nick brings up something we referenced earlier, Davey, and you and I talked about the grip and have during the course of the weekend, and ideally you'd like to see that grip level go up noticeably over the course of the weekend. I'm curious though, but because of the atmosphere and the fact that it's going to be warm and very, very sunny, and you throw in the combination with the dirt and the dust, that's got to affect the grip levels, and it doesn't grip up here as well as it does in some other places.
Yeah, and you're key. You're exactly set the nail on the head. The more rubber gets on this racetrack, the faster it gets. And I'll have to say, right now, it's really prime conditions for these drivers. They're probably out there going, wow, the car feels great. It feels better than it has all weekend because it's cooler temperatures, the track temperature's down, the motors are running better, the tires are gripping better. We got to remember, it's going to be another 4 hours before that green flag comes out, and it's going to be extremely hot. And so even though you got to keep that into mind is when these tires per se start losing grip, it's just going to be worse as the day goes. So race time comes, they need to factor that in. But I'm looking now through this timing and scoring, and the guy that's had the most miserable weekend here, Mark, by far, and with the least amount of laps of Schwartzman, right now he's P11 with that rookie. Is doing a great job with that Prima team to come back from a burn-up car. They just, the only laps he had was qualifying. Here he is at this final warm-up session in P11. So pretty good job by that driver and team.
Is that Rasmussen and Rosenquist that are having some fun out there, Nick Yeoman?
Yeah, they've been mixing it up quite a bit. We saw Kyle Kirkwood and Renus VK dicing it up as well around the Thermal Club. And we just saw Felix Rosenquist jump to the inside down at turn number 7 and make a pass. And we're watching ever. Graham Rahall's getting racy, trying to get around Nolan Siegel. So, Mark, there are places around this racetrack where you can make a pass. And Davey talked about conditions right now perfect for these guys really to experiment and, bump that aggressive level up a couple notches.
Yeah, Santino Ferrucci letting Nolan Siegel have at it back there with Graham Rahal. The Siegel starts to pull away a little bit. So, yeah, there's some pretty good. We don't want to call them battles because, David Land, this is, after all, supposed to be just a practice session, but it's a pretty darn good dress rehearsal, I think.
I'll tell you what, I'm impressed. It looks super competitive out there right now. We're seeing, for all the doom and gloom we had going into this race, what I'm seeing in morning warm-up now is passing, cars being able to run close together. Maybe it's the cool conditions, but I think part of it too is what we're going to see throughout this race is drivers on different tire strategies, and that's going to create a big pace gap, and that's what we're going to see. We're going to see drivers side by side passing each other as those as the alternate tire strategies change throughout this race. So what I'm seeing right now is the recipe for a pretty good race, and I think we're all pretty excited about that.
And Davey, you brought up an interesting point before we picked up that battle Nick and I were talking about that referenced it with David a bit, but I thought it was interesting. Some of the drivers we talked about yesterday who struggled in qualifying, they were talking about just how very much that racetrack had changed from Friday's practice session to Saturday, and your contention is that if they think it's changed, then wait until they see how much it changes between now and race time.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, from right now to when it happens, here in a few hours, temperature, ambient's going to go up, track temperature's going to go up, and these drivers have said, man, this track is really, when temperature changes, wind changes, it's really conducive to change their chassis and their handling a lot. So, man, it's just going to get hotter as the day goes. Now, the good news is they have ran in the hot conditions. They're going to go back to that data and what their cars were doing and where they were set up compared to right now and try to figure that out. That's where the engineers get paid the money they get paid because they have to hit it right. But the driver also has to give good feedback. As we see one of the cars, looks like Siegel spun out. Looks like he didn't stall it back going again.
Nick Yeoman, you got a peek at that?
Yeah, that's entering turn number 8. That might be where that bump is located before they transition from 8 back to the left to turn 9. Maybe a little bit before, but that's a swinging to the right-hand corner for Nolan Siegel. Looped it around, didn't hit anything. That's a nice thing. There's a lot of area off the racetrack, that dirt and dust where you can keep your car, all 4 corners on it. But Nolan Siegel back rolling here on Thermal Club.
Interesting to note, Davey, if they've been on this set of primaries now, we talked about these drivers getting into double digits now with 10 seconds remaining in this session. Do they now, with 11 or 12 laps on these alternates, have a pretty good idea of what the wear is going to be like during race conditions?
Oh yeah, it's going to tell them. As a matter of fact, I'll go tell you a little bit right now. I'm just going to take Colton Herta. I just looked up. He was a 1:41.278, his fastest lap. His last lap, 1:43.15. So we're 2 seconds slower right there just with Colton Herta alone. Ilott, he just ran his fastest lap on that set of alternates. Don't know. It shows 11 laps. Don't know how old those alternates are. Let's go with Palou. He was a 1:40. His best time, a 1:41.9. I'm basically 1:42. There's a second and a half difference between his fastest lap and his slowest lap. So it seems to me like they drop off fairly quickly in that 1.5 to 2 second range.
Checker on the session now. Palou is P1, then Dixon, Newgarden, Rahal, and Ilott the top 5. Herta, Foster, McLaughlin, Armstrong, and Ferrucci the top 10. Fast speed, by the way, or time we should say, at a minute 43.66 by Alex Palou. 11th Rosenquist, 12th Siegel, 13th Daly, 14th Lundgaard. 15th Schwartzman. Been a big weekend for them. It's been a trying weekend for them. They have to have a little bit of spring in their step with all that they faced this weekend with the issues that he had on Friday and getting the car put back together for him. Kirkwood's 16th fastest in power. Then Maluka's Award is in there as well, along with Stingray Robb. The 21st is Kiffin Simpson, then Erickson Rossi, DeFrancesco, Abel, Rasmussen, and VK. So David Land, let's put you on the spot here. We'll give you 3. Pick 3 that you think will be on the podium today.
Oh, the whole podium. That's going to be difficult. I think you can't pick against Alex Palou. I think you got to go with one of the Andretti cars. They've looked pretty consistent throughout the practice, so we'll go with Marcus Ericsson. And then I don't think you can count out one of the Team Penske cars. And you know what? I'm going to take the thirsty threes. It's going to be Scott McLaughlin rounding out the podium.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if they're able to put together the kind of pit strategy that will get them to the front. And Nick Yeoman, a lot of times you go into a race with you almost got to come in with 2 or 3 different set strategies, don't you? Because you never know when cautions are going to occur.
Well, and when we have races where there are a lot of strategies at play, there is one team, Mark, that consistently hits it pretty strongly, and that's the number 9 team of Scott Dixon and Mike Cole. So I wouldn't rule them out either, obviously starting towards the front half of the field. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Mike Cole and Scott Dixon have something up their sleeve. If this thing becomes a strategy race like we certainly expect it to become with how many different options you have with the tires, I wouldn't be surprised if that 9 car is strong and Scott Dixon pulls a win off.
And this is one of those racetracks where Scott Dixon's never won.
That's right. All the years he's been running in open wheel racing, 25 years, a historic career, but he's never won at Thermal.
Yeah, and so maybe he can check that one off the list today. Schwartzman will roll off in that 27th position. In row number 13, it'll be Scott McLaughlin and Devlin DeFrancesco. Row number 12 will be Jacob Abel and Stingray Robb. In row 11, Will Power and Callum Ilott. In row number 10, Christian Rasmussen and Kiffin Simpson. In row number 9, it'll be Joseph Newgarden and Graham Rahal. Connor Daly, Nolan Siegel make up row number 8. In row 7, VK and Santino Ferrucci. Then Scott Dixon, David Malukas in row number 6, Felix Rosenquist and Louis Foster in row number 5. Marcus Armstrong, Kyle Kirkwood in row number 4. Row 3 features Marcus Ericsson and Alexander Rossi. In row number 2, it'll be Alex Palou and Colton Herta. On the outside of row number 1, Christian Lundgaard, and securing the first front row start in IndyCar for his team, Pato O'Ward is on pole for the 6th time in his career. Jake Query has set up shop, hoping to get a few minutes with Louis Foster. I want to remind you can join us this afternoon. We'll have pre-race festivities for you beginning at 2:30 Eastern time, and lots to talk about, and we will preview coming up the 50th anniversary of the Long Beach Grand Prix as part of our pre-race festivities. That's a couple of weeks away. Let's welcome in Jonathan Grace.
Thanks, Mark. I'm down here with Callum Ilott aboard the number 90 Prema team. It's been a tale of 2 cars. Robert Schwartzman has been playing catch-up, but you've been running laps consistently the whole weekend. How much has the team relied on the data and the feedback from the laps that you've turned all the way from practice 1 until now to help with the other car?
I think quite a lot. I've been the only one out, really. You know, it's the way it's been this weekend. Qualifying wasn't easy. We didn't quite get it right, and it happens. There's something to learn from, but we made some positive changes overnight, and yeah, pace so far in warm-up looks good, but you don't know what anyone else is doing, and we're starting quite far back, so have to see, but yeah, it's positive. Look, we're learning, even if it's not going amazingly, like in qualifying, we're learning a lot, so.
I know everyone in the field, especially on the Reds, doing a lot of learning on those softer tires. What did you learn in warm-up?
Obviously, they're quite temperature sensitive, but they've got quite a pace advantage over the blacks for a few laps. I didn't get enough running to really see when the degradation starts to hit, but so far the first initial laps weren't too bad, but it's the later on part that counts, really.
Long race ahead. Jake Query to you.
Louis Foster's had a pretty good weekend so far. We'll roll off 10th, but let's talk about just that session in general. Looks like you had a pretty good feel on that car, but I want to talk about the softer compound red tires. How reliant can you be on a stent in those in the race itself?
Not too sure, to be honest with you. We were one of the unlucky ones. I've only got one set of new reds, whereas most people, at least who are behind me, have 2 sets of new reds. So we'll see how it plays out. But no, the car was really, really strong today. Actually, about to talk to the guys, but there's not a lot I think we can really do to it. I think we're kind of in the window. I'm happy with the balance of it. Yeah, I think it should be an interesting race. I think it could end up being a red race, but I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
So there is the possibility that some teams you think could go double stint reds in this one?
Possibly, yeah.
What about for you just in general? This is obviously a new track really for everybody. I mean, in terms of it being a first points race, but this track in general, the challenges it creates for you would be what?
Yeah, I mean, it's a super technical track. It's very long. I think it's the longest one we go to, maybe outside of Road America. And yeah, it's super tricky as a driver and as a team to set up the car, really. There's a lot of fast corners around the back in the blue section, we call it. And then in the red section, it's all tight, twisty, 180-degree corners. So to get that balance feel right throughout the entire lap is very, very difficult. So you kind of have to give up one thing and take another thing. We've been very, very strong in the last half of the lap all weekend. We've just been struggling in the first half with traction and rotation. So it's definitely a tricky one to get used to.
We're not midday heat yet, but like you're barely sweating here. You just got out of the car. You look cool and relaxed. You know you're a rookie, right? You know this is supposed to be a challenge, right?
It's hard, trust me. We've it may look not easy at all, but we put a lot of effort into it, and that's I think why we've been able to show a strong result so far this weekend. But yeah, no, I'm enjoying every moment of it so far, and to be up against some of these guys who I've been watching in IndyCar for many, many years is a real privilege.
Appreciate the time. We'll talk to you later today.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Louis Foster, Mark.
Happy to have David Land with us throughout the course of the weekend. And David, normally when a car pulls into victory lane, they thank their sponsor, they thank the Firestone Firehawks, they thank the engine manufacturer. I got a sneaking suspicion that whoever gets to victory lane, the first person they're going to thank will be the race strategist today.
1,000%. Because as we just kind of got surprised, I think I was surprised when I heard Louis Foster say it might be a red race. Wait a second. Yeah. We were talking about the primaries this entire weekend, and all of a sudden, well, I think we might double the softs, or some of the guys behind me might double the softs. That's insane. A couple of points I want to make about the starting grid. I feel like I haven't talked enough about McLaren and the fact that they locked out this front row. This is the first time I think Pato O'Ward's really had a true competitor, an equal, and it's Christian Lundgaard, and they're both going to be going into turn one at the same time trying to establish dominance. I'm sure nothing could happen between those two drivers.
And maybe they've not been together long enough to be friends, so...
Everybody's friends with Pato. What are you talking about?
I bet Tony Kanaan has a conversation with those two before the race.
But will they? Well, they'll listen to him, and they'll nod, but then they'll put the helmets on.
I'm not sure Tony listens.
Wait a second. Tony Kanaan, the driver who is best known for his first lap heroics, is going to tell his drivers to not do that. Okay, let's see.
So what's the postmortem going to look like for you? What can fans, the people that are fans of your channel, look for throughout the course of the day, and then once this race is over?
Yeah, so, I mean, if you want to watch the race along with me, certainly still tune into IndyCar Radio. That's what I'm going to be doing. It's the best coverage out there. After the race, Monday, or if it's real controversial, like I was just trying to tease there, will be Sunday night, do a race review, and then on Tuesday, I've got a new show called Unverified, co-hosted with Tony Donahue. So we love to talk a lot of stuff, and so if you like talk shows, that's a good place to go.
Well, this friendship relationship we've developed, I think, is a win-win for us. We like to think of it that way, and thanks for joining us throughout the course of the weekend.
Absolutely. I can't believe you let me up here.
All right, David Lamb, best of luck to you. Continued success. For the whole crew, we'll see you in just a couple of hours for complete coverage with Pato O'Ward and Christian Lundgaard leading the field to the green flag. This is Mark Jane saying so long for now from the Thermal Club IndyCar Grand Prix.